The forest floor pulsed beneath their feet like something alive. At first, it was subtle, easy to mistake for fatigue or imagination. A soft lift beneath the soles of their boots, followed by a slow release, as if the ground itself were breathing. Mara stopped mid-step, heart stuttering, and looked down at the leaf-littered earth. Damp soil, rotting needles, and a web of roots lay exposed where erosion had thinned the ground. Nothing moved. "Did you feel that?" she asked. Jonah shifted his pack and shrugged, though his eyes never left the forest ahead. Probably just the roots settling. But when he took another step, the ground responded again. A shallow rise, patient fall. They stood very still. The woods around them were vast and ancient, trunks towering so high the canopy dissolved into shadow. No trail marked their passage. They had been moving off-map for hours, guided only by instinct and the fading memory of a stream they'd crossed before dusk. The silence was wrong. Not peaceful, but deliberate. No birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed to avoid this place. The forest inhaled beneath them. Mara's breath caught. The movement was clearer now, rolling outward from a point somewhere deeper in the trees. Leaves trembled. A fern folded inward on itself. The pulse traveled through the soil like a slow heartbeat. "Jonah," she whispered, "it's not settling." They stepped back at the same time. The ground followed. Roots rose slightly, not breaking the surface, but pressing upward from below, their shapes shifting like knuckles beneath skin. The soil darkened where moisture was drawn upward, damp and cold against their boots. Mara could feel it through the soles, pressure, intention, a rhythm too measured to be natural. The pulse stopped. The sudden stillness was worse. The forest held itself rigid, like a body freezing mid-motion. Shadows between the trees stretched and warped, no longer matching the angles of the fading light. Jonah turned slowly, scanning their surroundings. Every tree looked the same now, thick trunks, tangled undergrowth, endless depth. "We should keep moving," he said. They walked carefully, each step tentative. The forest floor remained still beneath them, but Mara sensed something waiting, coiled tight beneath the soil. With every footfall, she expected the ground to give way or rise up again. A sound drifted through the trees. Not a call, not a growl. A low vibration, felt more than heard, like distant thunder buried underground. It resonated through the roots, through their bones. The ground pulsed again, stronger this time. Mara stumbled as the soil lifted, throwing her off balance. Jonah grabbed her arm, pulling her upright. Beneath them, the earth rolled in a slow wave, leaves sliding against each other with a wet, whispering sound. Roots shifted, rearranging themselves, tightening their grip on the surface. "It's moving," Jonah said, voice tight. "The whole forest is moving." They tried to run. The forest resisted. With every step, the ground rose just enough to disrupt their stride, falling away beneath their heels. The pulses followed them, not random but adjusting, anticipating. The vibration beneath the soil deepened, syncing with their panicked heartbeats. Mara glanced back and immediately wished she hadn't. The ground behind them was different now, smooth in places where it had been rough moments before, as if something enormous had passed just beneath the surface, compressing soil and root alike. The path they'd taken was already erasing itself, leaves sliding back into place, impressions filling in. "There's no trail anymore," she said. Jonah slowed, chest heaving. "There never was one." They stopped in a small clearing where the trees thinned unnaturally, their trunks bent slightly inward, as if drawn toward a central point. The ground here was bare. No leaves, no undergrowth, just dark, compacted soil that gleamed faintly with moisture. The pulse came again. This time it came from everywhere at once. The earth swelled beneath their feet, lifting them several inches before settling back down. Mara screamed, the sound swallowed immediately by the woods. The soil rippled outward in concentric waves, roots flexing beneath the surface, tightening, loosening. "It's not the ground," Jonah said slowly, realization creeping into his voice. "It's under it." Something vast shifted below them, its movement too controlled, too purposeful. Mara imagined a body stretching beneath miles of forest, its awareness extending through every root and stone. The trees weren't just growing here. They were connected, federal directed. The forest wasn't alive. It was a body, and they were standing on its chest. A shape moved at the edge of the clearing, not fully visible, only a distortion where shadows bent wrong. Mara felt eyes on her, though nothing reflected light. The presence didn't rush them. It didn't need to. The ground itself did its work. Roots began to surface, not violently, not breaking through, but easing upward, looping gently around ankles, calves, boots. The contact was cold and firm, the pressure increasing gradually like a test. Mara tried to pull free. The root tightened slightly in response. Jonah reached for her, but the ground beneath him dipped, throwing him to one knee. The soil pulsed hard beneath his palm, and he recoiled as if burned. "It's learning," he whispered. "We're teaching it." The vibration deepened, slowing, growing heavier. The forest exhaled. A sound like wind drawn through 1,000 buried hollows. Shadows thickened, merging together, blurring the boundaries between tree and ground. Mara felt the root at her ankle loosen, just enough to give hope, before another coil slid higher, wrapping her calf. Not restraining yet, measuring. The presence in the clearing shifted closer. She could feel it now, not as a shape, but as awareness pressing in from all sides, ancient and incurious, as though they were not threats, only nutrients that had wandered too far from where they belonged. The pulse slowed. 1, 2, 3. The rhythm matched her breathing. The forest floor rose again, gently this time, cradling their weight. The roots beneath them tightened, not painfully, but firmly enough to keep them from moving. Jonah met her eyes. "Don't fight it," he said, though terror trembled beneath the words. I think it wants us still." Mara nodded, afraid to move, afraid not to. The forest settled around them, the silence returning, thick and complete. Somewhere deep below, the pulse continued, steady and patient, waiting, and far beneath the soil something vast shifted, adjusting to the new weight it had finally learned how to hold. They kept hearing someone whisper, "Don't look behind you," though no one was there. The first time it happened, Rowan thought it was just the forest settling around them. Wood cooled quickly after sunset, trunks contracting with soft pops and creaks. Sound carried strangely out here, voices bent, footsteps echoed where no one walked. It was easy to imagine words in the hush. The second time, the whisper came closer. "Don't look behind you." It brushed the edge of her hearing, breathy and careful, as though spoken directly into her ear. Rowan stopped walking so abruptly that Caleb nearly collided with her. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Caleb frowned, listening. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction. Towering trees packed so tightly together that the last traces of dusk struggled to reach the ground. No trail, no markers, just roots, leaf litter, and shadows stacked on shadows. "Hear what?" he asked. Rowan hesitated. Saying it out loud felt dangerous, like acknowledging the sound might make it stronger. "Nothing," she said finally. "I thought I heard something." They continued deeper into the woods, their boots sinking into damp soil. The air was colder here, heavy with the smell of rot and moss. Not a single insect chirped. No birds called from the canopy. Even the wind seemed reluctant to move. Silence pressed in from all sides. The whisper returned. "Don't look behind you." Caleb stopped this time. The words hadn't come from any clear direction. They weren't loud enough to echo, but not quiet enough to ignore. They seemed to arrive already inside his head, bypassing his ears entirely. "Rowan," he said slowly, "tell me you heard that." She nodded, her throat tight. "Yes." They stood back to back without meaning to, both facing forward, eyes locked on the dark corridor of trees ahead. Rowan felt an overwhelming urge to turn around, to confirm that nothing was there, to prove the whisper wrong. The fear came from knowing she couldn't. Something shifted in the undergrowth behind them. Not footsteps too soft for that. More like the ground adjusting its weight. "Don't look behind you," the voice whispered again, closer now, firmer. It didn't sound threatening. It sounded concerned. Caleb swallowed. "Who's there?" he called. The forest did not answer. Instead, the light changed. The fading dusk dimmed further, though no clouds crossed the sky. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, stretching in directions that didn't match the angle of the remaining light. Tree trunks appeared subtly bent, not curved by growth, but leaning, tilting toward them as if listening. Rowan felt watched, not stared at exactly, measured. They began walking again, faster now, neither daring to turn around. With every step, Rowan sensed movement just beyond her field of vision. A presence matching their pace, always behind, always perfectly positioned where they refused to look. The whisper followed them. "Don't look behind you." Each repetition carried a slight change. The first had been gentle, the second urgent. Now it sounded strained, as though saying the words required effort. Caleb's breathing grew uneven. "Why would it say that?" he muttered. Rowan shook her head. "Maybe it doesn't want us to see it. Or maybe," Caleb said quietly, "it doesn't want us to see something else." They reached a small clearing where the trees thinned abruptly. The ground here was bare, stripped of leaves, the soil packed down hard and smooth. The silence deepened, thick enough to feel. Rowan stopped at the edge. Something was wrong. The clearing reflected sound strangely. Their footsteps echoed back to them a fraction of a second too late, distorted, stretched. When Caleb shifted his weight, the sound repeated, but not quite accurately. Like an imitation, the whisper came again. "Don't look behind you." This time it wasn't alone. Another sound accompanied it. A soft, rhythmic compression of soil, as if something enormous were adjusting its stance directly behind them. Rowan's pulse pounded so loudly she worried it could be heard. "Caleb," she whispered. "I think it's right there." He nodded without turning. "I know." They stood frozen, staring at the empty clearing ahead while the forest seemed to close in behind them. Rowan became aware of a pressure at her back. Not touch, not heat, just presence. A displacement of space. The whisper changed. "Please," it said. That single word terrified her more than anything else. Caleb clenched his fists. "Why are you telling us this?" he demanded, voice shaking. "Why not just do whatever you're going to do?" Silence. Then footsteps. Not behind them. Ahead. Rowan stared as a shape emerged between the trees across the clearing. At first, it looked like a person, roughly human in outline, but the longer she focused, the less sense it made. Its proportions were wrong. Too tall. Too narrow. Its surface didn't reflect light so much as absorb it, warping the space around it. It didn't move toward them. It simply stood there, waiting. The whisper came again, now directly between Rowan's thoughts. "Don't look behind you." Understanding crept in slowly, sickening and unavoidable. The voice wasn't warning them about itself. It was warning them about what was already standing behind them. The footsteps behind them stopped. Something leaned closer. Rowan felt breath, or the absence of it, brush the back of her neck. Caleb squeezed her hand, his grip desperate. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "don't turn around." The voice behind them spoke one last time, no longer whispering. Too late. Rowan never knew whether the sound she heard next was them turning, or the forest finally closing its eyes.